Hello, welcome to Sunday Club. I apologize for the late start this morning. Normally I would say that it's 10:30 on Sunday morning, but OBS has screwed me over with the audio again. So we did start a stream, the audio didn't kick in from the mic, so no one could hear the intro. And so I've had to start again. So if you see me looking down, I'm actually just waiting to check the audio from this is working. You might have heard some clicking sounds. It's so frustrating when that happens. I'm really I don't know if it's OBS, I don't know if it's the microphone, I don't know, whatever it is. Let me just check. Cool, okay, so that is coming through. Okay, so I'm gonna keep checking that periodically just because I'm really paranoid about that happening now, but once we get going, it seems to kick in. I had to delete some of the audio settings and recreate them, so if there's anything wrong with the audio today, I apologize. I'll try and take a look into it, but basically OBS is not super solid. Okay, so let's take a look at what we are up to. If you've never watched this before, Sunday Club is a weekly live stream where we live stream some Ruby on Rails code and try and build an app together. It's not tutorials or anything like that, but we do try and look at things from a learner's perspective and kind of take a look at some of the options and approaches that we could take and kind of hopefully dive a little bit into what people are interested in through building this app. And the app that we're building is an app that builds websites for channels, for YouTube channels, Twitch streamers and stuff like that. So it's kind of like it'll build a website for Sunday Club, for the channel basically. So that's what it does. And this week, what I want to look at is we're going to do some planning and actually work out what we're going to do with the kind of initial building blocks that we built. So we've got users in the app, we've got our initial model as associations, we've got permissions and authorizations, and we also looked at how we could have like an admin area and give people access to that. So those are all of the building blocks that we built, but we want to work out how we're going to put them together and how we're going to plan to do that. And to be honest, I didn't really get a huge amount of time to do any planning during the week, so I thought it would be interesting to do it live. And take a look at how even just some of the decisions we've already made have had an impact on what we might do moving forward. So let's not take any longer talking. Let's kind of dive right in. I'm gonna just jump over to the screen and do a little bit of follow-up. So let's take a look here to begin with. So this is GitHub. You'll notice I did finally get some of the tidy up done last week. After the stream, I did go through and tidy up. If you remember, we were on that install Tailwind branch for a long time. So I did kind of just chop off a few commits from that and turn it into a kind of quick PR just with the Tailwind stuff. We are still on a very long branch. I didn't get that long to tidy them up, but hopefully we'll end up with a nice kind of like series of pull requests and little streams that they're associated with if I did any of it live, so that people can go and kind of take a look and see how that was made. So that's in our repo. Everything's public, so you can go take a look at that if you're interested in any of the code that gets written and you want to go take a look at it afterwards. Now, what I wanted to look at is kind of, like I said, the planning and the kind of how we're going to shape what we're working on, and we're gonna try something out that I haven't done before. So basically what I've got, let's try this. This is a brand new technology. I've got a Jamboard, which I haven't used before. So normally I would do this. I have an app called Concepts on the iPad, which I really recommend. I really like it. And it kind of gives you this kind of infinite canvas to do sketching and drawing and stuff. So this is Google's Jamboard. But the reason for that is I want to draw on my iPad because I find drawing with a mouse not good, and normally I would do this on either pen and paper or use Concepts, but I can't kind of stream that. So I'm hoping if I just make myself some room on here, bear with me, we can kind of draw this out. So if I draw on here, I'm hoping that will then show up on the screen. Cool. So if we zoom in to 100%, I can write something, it's a T, and you can see it. So I'm going to apologize in advance for my crappy handwriting, but let's not dwell on that, shall we? Because that's not going to be healthy for anyone. Can we make that? Okay, so we can make that a bit bigger. Maybe zoom in a bit later on. So let's take a look. I don't have a keyboard to hand, so let's use my laptop for a second. So let's take a look at the kind of code we had. So we had our models that we did in our initial live stream. We had our user, we had our organization, we had our channel, And that's all we've got so far. And we put an association on here because those were kind of like just ones that we discussed, and we did a really kind of short diagram just to take a look at that. I'll put a link to that stream in the description later. And one of the things that I then did during the week that I did find time for was to go and take a look at a couple more of these apps that do the type of app we're building, which is go and build a website from for a live stream for something like that. And so loads of them are like, give me the channel and I will give you a website. So that's how we end up with channel and organization. Now, the problem with that is, I was kind of thinking that through, is that actually this live stream that you're watching now, even if you're watching it later, it goes out on YouTube, but it also goes out on Twitch, and it also I'm trying to get it sorted so it can go out on Periscope and other places, and maybe Facebook and things like that. And I was like, oh, actually the site that you're building, you might want different channels represented, so you might have like a behind the scenes channel or something like that. So let's jump back to our Jamboard. So these are the models we've got at the moment, and let's jump back to okay, so we've got I don't know if I can zoom in a bit to write a bit bigger. So if we've got user, okay, cool. So you can see that we've got user, and then oh, the user's my hand. Okay, so let's erase that. So we've got user, and then one of the things we did was we decided to have an organization. I am going to apologize again for my handwriting. I have to use this Apple Pencil-y thing, and it's writing on glass is not easy. And also I've written the American. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble from people watching that. That's the Americanization. So let's do the British version. Okay, so we've got organization. And what we had discussed was this concept of that being something that I tend to find over time, is that having a user own the thing that you're working on, whether it's in our case like a channel or a site or something like that, often comes back to bite you in the bum because of needing multiple users, multiple teams, and then an organization really needing a billing strategy or whatever it is that you're doing, or to control memberships or whatever it is. So that tends to be something that you have to come back and rebuild in the kind of pretty early on. And I would normally say don't optimize early, just know that that's going to happen, but I actually did that deliberately so that we would bump into that problem during coding stuff. So it was a case of saying, okay, well, let's try and bring some of the problems forward. And so let's take a look at one of the problems that we've already had. So we've got a user and we've got an organization. So the other thing that we had, let's move this over, was a channel. Okay, this app is not as good as concepts. Okay, cool. So I have to be careful not to touch it. My other hand. Okay, so the other thing we had was we had a channel, and the channel was like a YouTube channel or a Twitch channel or something like that, and that then an organization owned the channel. And so let's do some of these things. So we have a user, one organization has many users, and then the idea was going to be that one organization could have many. There's a little okay, it's supposed to be a little mini kind of infinity symbol thing. Okay, that'll do. I'm not going to really get into the things. I'm hoping these are readable. Okay, so yeah, like I said, so looking around, there are a couple of these that didn't quite do that. They actually do work like this, these websites where you put in your channel and they build you a website. And I was like, oh, actually, let's try and do something a bit different, because I don't think the channel is the actual unit that we want to work with here. So we want to work with the site that gets created is what I thought of, because a site may want to pull in like clips from Twitch, or it might want to have, you might own 2 YouTube channels, for example, and want a site that represents both. So we could have Sunday Club, and then we could have maybe a different channel for homework editions or for behind the scenes or something like that. Yeah, maybe you have one author. So maybe, Bob Smith has a channel that represents his work stuff and his personal stuff, and he might have a site that represents both. And I was like, oh, actually, that's interesting, because we've already coded this relationship in. So I was like, oh, okay, well, immediately what we could do is start to throw a spanner in the works and say, right, what happens if actually we introduce the concept of a site, and actually an organization has many sites perhaps, and a site could then have many channels. And I like that my little face pops up when doing this. So I'll probably zoom in on this a little further so that this is, oops, okay, that's way further. Zoom out. How do I move around? Can I use the spacebar? No. Can I use the spacebar doing that? Yeah, okay, cool. When I was looking at these other services, it's actually the site that's performing all of the work. The channel is providing the content, and the site is doing the work. And when I say work, what is the site actually doing? The site generally for these services seems to do one of four things. So let's take a look at those. I need to zoom back out to fit this on. Okay, so the site is generally allowing people to subscribe. It is allowing them to sponsor. Hoping these are even vaguely legible when you're watching the stream back. They are allowing them to buy merch, which is just, that covers everything, but that's basically like make a purchase of some description. And the other thing that they can do is then basically have some sort of blog / content, and that could come from feeds, Instagram, Twitter, some other feed or something like that. But they seem to be the four things, but they're site specific. They're actually not they're not tied to that channel necessarily. You could have a site that represented two channels that did all four of those things. I mean, subscribe would get tricky because you'd need to subscribe to that. Actually, subscribe is probably a good example of one where it goes down to the channel, but you could do that on a per channel page or something. So why am I showing all of this stuff at the stream? Well, for two reasons. One, I want to make this change, but also how quickly the assumptions you make. Okay, there's someone commenting in a language that I don't understand, so I'm really sorry if you are commenting. I don't know what that says. So it's really easy on on your initial design to make mistakes and then have to code around them. And so we talked earlier about like user and organization is an optimization that you might not implement that initially because you don't want to deal with that complexity, and you might say, okay, well, a user owns a channel, let's just go and start coding that up. And basically how much planning you do before you start coding is really flexible, and I find it very different between projects, between teams, how established the code base is, how people like to work, what your process is within the organization, if it's just you on your own, what the purpose of the site is. Just a whole myriad of factors kind of affect this. And because we have no constraints whatsoever, because this is just kind of a casual Sunday morning stream together, we can kind of do what we like. Whereas obviously you couldn't be quite that cavalier if you were planning months of work for teams. There might be if you want to build a new feature or make existing changes, you might have to go through kind of due diligence as to what that change may impact with other things. Open source organizations would need to deal with backwards compatibility. And all of those factors go into just making a simple change like, I want to put a model between the organization and the channel. I think actually it's the site that we're working on. That's the first reason. The second one is that the next thing we want to do is work out how this works. So we've got a bunch of code at the moment and a dummy front end, but none of it actually does anything. It doesn't perform any actions yet. And we've basically just skipped over the whole user interface of it so far until we've had our building blocks in place. So we've got our users and a few gems up and running. We have got a user interface framework. We put Tailwind in place. And I think the next step is to kind of work out what does the end result of this look like? Because we could go and build this kind of simple entity relationship diagrammy type of sketch out in code, but what is the actual impact of that? Where are we going? And again, that's something that you can then be as flexible with. If you're just learning, you might not bother to do that at all, and you just want to focus on the Ruby code and get that up and running, and just do enough user interface to get yourself out of the, so you can click through basically and fill in any forms that need to be filled in. Or you might be trying to build a product for people to use, and you want it to have like a bit more polish. So let's, I think I can add pages to this. I gave this first part some thought beforehand, but let's see if we can just, okay, so now we have one of two. Cool, okay. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit this on a screen, but let's take a look at what happens. So let's imagine that we are on some sort of, let's kind of imagine a user experience journey here. Again, this is kind of just off the top, so we may be way off. It doesn't really matter, I suppose. But we could have, yeah, I can do it in blue. That's fine. So we may have our screen here, and I'm just assuming it's like a mobile phone or a mobile screen or something like that. And what we really want is to, in order for a user to use the app, we're going to need some information. We're going to need them to create a user account, and I'm talking about the kind of channel website creation-y part here, not just coming along and viewing one of the websites that's been built. And before I do that, I'm actually just going to check this stream really quickly to make sure that the audio is still coming through, because I'll still get paranoid about that. Yep, that's my voice, so I can pause that and refresh it. Cool. Okay, so let's say that we have our homepage here. What do we want people to do? Or not homepage necessarily, but it could be like some sort of start of some sort of flow where they're creating their site. If I'm looking down, it's because the iPad is down here rather than looking up at the screen where you are. So we want to, if we go back, we really need to create this model and this model on kind of this flow. And I'm not working particularly in any kind of diligence or anything, any kind of process. I'm just kind of freewheeling here. So we want them to create a site, and we want them to create a user. But these things are joined by an organization. So how would we do that? Again, we could take organization out of it and just remove that level of complexity. Totally fine. I added that in deliberately at the start, but we could just take that out and say one user builds a site, and a site can have many users. I think I'm going to leave this level of complexity in though, because I'm interested to see how we deal with it. Literally interested to see what we're about to do. So, because I think I want to factor in what does it then look like if you want to build more than one site. Do you have to keep your user, like we use I've used Squarespace a bunch, and this is a good example for them. They have like users can have multiple sites, and then sites can have multiple users, but actually it's kind of annoying because often you want an organization to be in control, but they don't really have that. So it's interesting that they've kind of skipped that and kept the complexity at that user and site level. Most content management systems have some sort of problem, not a problem, but some sort of process for dealing with this. So what do we want from that user initially? We probably want to know like what they want to call their site. So we could have something like a text box, and this could be something like their site name, and a button that they can click. And the problem with that is we don't know anything about our user yet. But in general, just from UX stuff, like it's a decision as to whether you ask your users for their personal information up front. And I'm interested to see if in this design how it feels, where if you just start creating a site, if you know that that's the end goal of what you want to do, you want to build a new site for your YouTube channel or whatever, if you give the name of it, you're kind of already invested in that process, and you've already begun that process. It then feels less weird to be asked for your personal details to secure that, rather than just being like, hey, the first thing I need is something about you personally. And it also creates an interesting coding challenge, because then what do you do? When do you create the site, and when do you create the user, and vice versa? Because the normal process would be is like, oh, well, I need the user first because I can't create the site without the user. Or can we? Like, or do we just keep the name as some sort of variable and then move on to the next step. Okay, so that could be step like 1 to get that piece of information. And I'm basing some of this on some of the stuff I looked at during the week of other sites that do kind of similar things. This actually will take pretty different approaches, so it's interesting to see. So that could be the site name. So we could then have like another step. And you could kind of, I'd be interested to kind of to say, okay, well let's take this further. That's supposed to be a 2. This is really hard to write on. Yeah, close enough. It's a 2. You get the idea. So you could kind of ask for more information. So you could ask here for stuff. And I don't know what I mean by stuff, but what I think I mean is the channel ID from YouTube, or the URL, or Twitch or something like that, like the channel type. I've switched from speaking about sites to speaking about channels. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so and then maybe like a description. And I don't think you would need like API. You wouldn't need like a sign in with YouTube or anything at this point, because I think you can get everything about like some content and stuff without needing that. You could leave that further on, and then some sort of button to confirm that. I've kind of totally done myself out of room here. Can I? How do I select that stuff? Can I not do that? Oh, it's this one, sorry. So if I select all of this, and then if I move it over to the left, do I buy myself some more room? Make it a little smaller, maybe? Cool, okay. This tool's pretty good, actually. This is like a freebie thing from Google. I'm kind of into it. Okay, so then we put in step 3. So screen 3, and this I think will be interesting because it would force us to deal with how to do a wizard UI, which is always like a pain point. I did some streams on that on a different channel, just because everyone does them differently, so it'd be interesting to take maybe a different approach to normal. But here we could then say, what's your email address? What's the password you want to put on? Because by this time they've put a bunch of information in, and they're like, "Oh, I want to see the final results." They're kind of invested by this point, so you're probably more likely to get your the user details, and even if you haven't, at least you know a bunch of stuff about what they were trying to do before they got there, and that's it really. You wouldn't really need a bunch more because we've only put username and password on device so far, and then a button there. So this could be like, I mean, you could kind of call that site/channel name, that first one, and then you'd want some information on the second one, the second screen or second page, whatever you want to call it. And on the third one, you want to find out about the user. The downside of this approach is that you can't reclaim the user if they don't complete the flow. So if you get their email address or some detail up front, you can email them as long as you're GDPR compliant. Like you say, hey, can we email you about have a little tick boxy thing underneath. You might be able to say, hey, you didn't finish, but we can still reach out to you and say, come back, offer you some sort of discount or whatever it is. Another thing that I saw some of those sites doing, like I mentioned, is basically doing straight away with the API auth. So it's basically offering you like a Twitch or a Google button. I think Streamlabs, the one that we were looking at originally, does this. I think you have to sign up for their service. Let's go take a look at that actually. I just realized there's no keyboard there, so let me just pop this back up here. Move this over. Let's go take a look at Streamlabs. Does the Google search bar look different today, or am I just imagining things? Okay, so Yeah, so this is what Streamlabs do. They basically give you the 3 platforms that you can log in with, and actually there's 3 more underneath. One of the interesting things about this is you can't actually change these afterwards. So I have a Streamlabs account. That's how I'm streaming this stuff. Changing this afterwards is really painful because if you decide you want to not use that YouTube channel or something like that, I'm guessing you have to get in touch with support or something like that. But from a user's point of view, whereas if we just set the details up and then attaching the channels afterwards would not be ideal. It would be easier. You could kind of like, they could come and go. And let's like take a look at what they were doing. I had like website. You can see this is like merch is what I was talking about before. So where's the little website-y thing? I don't know where that's covered. But we did look at it on that first. Oh, is it listed under Prime? Custom tip page, merch. Oh, that's weird. You got mentioned like getting a oh, is it just is that the tip page? Is that it? What they call it? It was like a little website-y thing. Creator sites. Yeah, okay. Your page, your brand. Okay, so they just call them tip pages now. Okay, fair enough. Oops, sorry, knocking the mic. Themes, drag and drop, social integrations. Okay, cool stuff like that. So that's when you put when you sign up on that first page. When you go here, it uses that content, so it automatically already has the API stuff because they need to obviously publish the content in there anyway. So they need that to work. Whereas we don't really want to publish anything. We just want to pull and make it build some content using that. So I don't think we need that. What was the other one I was looking at was like was it like Resolute or something like that? It was like build web pages for YouTube channels. I think I googled it had a really short name. Build websites. You can see my typing. I think it was like YouTubers, so it's like for them. No, okay. I obviously typed in something really specific. Rivet. Here we go. So it's on page 2 on this one. I did do some research during the week. I wasn't just totally slacking off. So these guys do, so sign in, you get email and password here, and you get a magic link as well. So this is pretty similar to the Streamlabs-y stuff. You get the same kind of stuff. I think you get more. I think you get a page per video here, whereas I think the Streamlabs one is like kind of a single pager. And you can do more here, but it's basically the same process. So this one does ask you to start again. It is with which platform? I'm guessing it's because most people don't use more than one platform, just because mine tends to be. I tend to only really post YouTube links and stuff, but I'm going to put it on the other ones just because why not? And they start here. So if we put in Sunday Club. So tick this. Okay. I think I have to type it in all one word maybe. Is that our YouTube handle thing? Cool. Okay, so that's our channel. Thank you for subscribing, everyone. Like, I do really appreciate it. That's 62 people, which is crazy. And then they just generate a site from that because that's actually a pretty cool way to do it. So you don't need, like I said, like if you're not publishing, you don't need the API access. So we can do the same thing basically. I think you can just go and get the data. Yeah, it hasn't actually got any. I'm not really sure what's happening here. It hasn't got any of the streams or anything, which is weird, or pulled anything through. Oh, okay, and then they do want some more information there. That's weird. It's interesting that they do the search and they know your channel because they pop it up with the... They must know the channel ID and then they ask for the channel ID, but they must already have that, surely. Does that not get returned on that initial search? Maybe those are two different APIs. Okay. Well, these are all super interesting things. Like we're going to go, so if we go back to our UI that we're going to try and build out. This is public, by the way, so I'm just going to put a link to this in the description as well, so everyone can access this this stuff. Cool. Sorry, I'm just looking in the. Just got a couple bits here. Okay, cool. So we are gonna jump back over to our Jamboard, and how much further do we want to go? So that would get us quite a long way, I think, in terms of like, we would need to work out how to build our user, how to build our site. It would get us the information we need for our site. So if you notice on that Rivet thing, yes, okay, they do just, sorry, just returning to this. So they do this. So here they must have the channel ID. So the other option was select a design. So I think they have a bunch of templates and stuff you can do. So if we do this one, maybe it pulls the content through. No, it doesn't do that either, and that's the same thing. That's very strange. You still have to upload stuff. Okay, maybe it's just maybe you can't get that without the API access. Well, we'll find out. So that would get us to. We want to create a site. We would give it some information, and then we want to build that here. Then we want to get here and build our user. Do we persist these to the database? What do we do? Then we want to have our user, and that will get us this and this. And it will force us to answer the question of, if we want this organization thing, do we put in a placeholder organization that the user can just, that is just transparent to the user? Do we ask them for some other information on the way through? What do we do? And then when we get to site, it looks like on step 2, I think we could perhaps ask for some channel information. So we might be able to have at least one of the channels set up by the time they get there, and then we could show them something and then ask them for more information to start processing these bits of information. But that feels pretty that's pretty good. Just to clarify, on a professional level, if you're at work or something, you probably want to be doing a lot more planning than this. This is 4 blobs, 4 models on a whiteboardy thing, and some very rough wireframes. You probably know, if you're a learner, this is absolutely fine. Like whatever you do kind of to work for you. As you move into more kind of like professional settings, you will spend a huge amount of time, you know, with designers and user experience people, and planning various bits and bobs out, user journeys and the impacts on existing features and all that stuff. We're not doing any of our due diligence here. We're just going to smash into it. And I think kind of code some of this up. I think the next steps, I think, would perhaps be doing like a real sketch file or something for these UI things, because that would then get us some variables and some code that we could put into Tailwind. But I'm more interested in kind of coding on the Sundays and then trying to do Sunday mornings and then doing UI design separately. I'm not really sure when particularly. So okay, let's go take a look at coding this up, I think. I'm actually going to do this now. I'm going to pop the link to this in the YouTube video description now, because otherwise I will forget and be really mad about it. So let's drop in here. I think we can do this while the video is streaming, which is pretty cool. So let's say link to Jamboard. And it's public, so you can just come and take a look at it whenever you need. Cool, so that's in the YouTube video. Cool. Okay, so let's go code some of this up. Let's go and see what it does to the impact of our existing app, shall we? Let's kind of do that. So we know that we want to change some of this stuff, and we also now have a flow that we can start to aim towards just building out. Even if we don't have a design yet, we can start to do some stuff. So we've got nothing in our Git. It is out of date on our Git. We're on a new branch called install pundit. Let's take a look at where we are with our recent commits. Again, this is just the Git features within VS Code. There's still all the whip commits, cool. So I did tidy those ones up. I haven't put the whip commits in. I showed you the pull request at the start of this stream. That is, I think I did, or was that when the microphone was broken? I think I did. Yeah, so we had a pull request earlier, and I have tidied those commits up. They're not whip commits going in. So you see, I try, if you are a learner, I do always try and put a relevant comment on the commits rather than just having one-liners or whip commits going to master. And again, I haven't put a huge amount on the PR because there's a whole stream and there's information in the commit messages, but you would normally have more stuff in there that was relevant for reviews and stuff. Okay, so with nothing in there, we'll keep working on these whips. I did go back and do some tidy up, so I don't feel too guilty about not doing that. So let's see where we are up to. And what we really want to do is start to look at some tests as well, because we kind of skipped over some of that for our UI. So let's, just kind of thinking this through. What do we need for this to actually happen? We need like a public facing page, like a start page. We could just make that the home page for now. What else do we need? We need so that page needs a form to start the onboarding process, or we could call it like the creation process, whatever you want to call it. And then want those kind of series of controllers. Those would all be kind of public facing, so it'd be like new site. And then we need a way to administrate those. Okay, well let's and at some point we need to deal with this, like the organization and the user and the site, like how we're going to build those out. Okay, let's I'm not gonna lie, I would probably do more planning at this point in terms of like how that's gonna work, but let's just do it in code. Let's not worry too much about that. How long have we been online? Okay, 37. I know we ran late this morning, so and I'm just gonna check that the audio is still running as well before I start writing more code. Yep, cool. So let's start. And let's start from the beginning of having this kind of static page. Let's start building this one here. I don't think we had any concept of a home page previously, because I think we just dropped straight into our channels controller. And I think what we want is, and also if we go and look at our roots, we don't have like a root page, which we bumped into as an issue at the end of the last episode, I think, last stream. So we can let's build out let's just build it. I'm just going to go and check on GitHub a pattern that I'm just going to do this on the other screen, so you won't be able to see this just for a second. I'm just going to go take a look at a couple of basic ways where I felt I haven't shot myself in the foot with this. That's not ideal. Over here. Bear with me just a second. Okay, let's just build a static one for now. We'll just have like a static controller, because we only really need a couple pages. So let's have something like a static controller. You can call it something more relevant, I think, if that makes sense to you. And let's get this up and running. I'm just going to create an action straight away on that cooldown page. This is like this isn't very scalable, particularly. You're kind of probably going to need more than this, but I just want to build out a home page that we can use. So let's build a quick spec for that as well, just so we always want that to be available. So let's say we want static controller spec. Oh, I used to then have, there we go. That template doesn't have that at the top, which we need. So I'm just kind of going quite quickly here, not really explaining things, but that's okay, because this is all pretty boilerplate stuff. Back over there, okay. And we can have a page. And we just want it to be available, so we expect the response, to have HTTP. I think that's right. Just where's our terminal? We can bring that over. Sorry, I'll just bring it over onto the other screen. And we can say oh god, I already can't remember whether we had to do the bundle exec thing on there. I think we did. Yep. Cool. Hopefully that will run. And that's just going to run all our tests, but we've hardly got any, so. Cool, to define static controller, so let's save that. And does this now work? Should say there's no root to it. Just going to It's a bit bigger. I'm hoping you can read it. Yep, we can't get there, and also load of the other tests are broken, but that's fine because they were just from the other week. Actually, I only really care about this one for now because I imagine we broke those last week. So then in here, we want to go to our roots, and if you define the root, can you then not have to name it? Does that make sense? Like, can I just put it as the root and the controller test will know to find it there, or do I have to list it as a specific thing? I'm just gonna look. I'm looking on the other screen at an existing repo to see what I did there. I actually can't see where. Okay, it's actually a really stupid idea because I can't actually see. Oh, I created a series of landing pages. Actually, that was a really good idea. Okay, if I do this. Does that work? Oh, it did. Okay. So now we need the template for it. So we need a folder in our views. And then I've actually already just seen on the other screen a better way of doing this, just calling them landing pages and then having a series, like a namespace for that, and then having a controller for each one. Worked a bit better because they all end up with like custom conversions and bits and bobs. So that is the view that's empty, and that should be our new. Great, so that then works, and that should then be our homepage. But what we also want to do is we're going to create a feature test for this because I don't think we've done that yet, but we want to go through our flow. So let's do that, and I think we installed Capybara. Maybe we didn't. Oh, we did. Okay, cool. Don't know if we did anything with it. Okay, so we've got features, and let's go and check. I'm not sure what we need. Okay, so let's see if we can get something running in here. So spec, features, I think you can just do feature. And then there's a load of different formats that people have for these. I'm going to kind of do it in a story style. So I can never like people have different like context and describe. They use different things. I'm just not going to get too bogged down in that right now. So as a non-logged in visitor, when I visit the home page, what's the capybara? Is it like scenario or something? I think, is it interchangeable? Can you use it? Okay, I'm just gonna Google that. Scenario it. Describe context features scenario. The aspect we tend to use describe for things and context for context. Okay, fair enough. Feature and scenario part of kappa byron are spec and are meant to be used for acceptance tests. Feature is equivalent to describe context and scenario equivalent to it example. If you're writing acceptance tests with kappa byron, use the feature scenario syntax. If not, use describe it. Okay. Okay, random person on Stack Overflow. I will do what you tell me. Yeah, and then some people like, there's no I should. I don't have time to get bogged down in that. I don't really care about this. So expect page to and let's just write something pretty basic on there for now. Can we get this to run? Features, I think that should work. Cool, and then if we just write some nonsense in here, let's just check it fails and we're not getting a false positive there. Cool, it fails. Cool, so we've got a feature test, so that's actually like doing stuff with our whole stack, sort of, rather than just testing the response back from the controller. It will actually check that the view that's rendered has the right content in. So we can do this. So now if we go to, so if we start a server up, so if we make a new tab, can never beat the thing that shows up. And if we go to our home page, it's running a bit behind while it starts the server. Okay, cool. So, ooh, that's interesting. You're not you're not authorized to perform this action, but it redirects you to this page. How does it not end up in an infinite loop? Okay, that must... because I tried to go somewhere else. Is that right? So if you remember from a previous episode, we put... it would be can, I guess, saying, please make sure that for every... for certain controllers, please make sure that there is a user logged in, and you'd have a flash message. If that's not the case, it wasn't styled very much like a flash message. But we haven't added that to our new controller, our static controller, so it doesn't care if there's a user or not, and we haven't put any authorized steps in from Punda either, so it should just be a totally public page, which is why that test passed. That flash message was just from us loading up a previous URL. So that gives us our home page. Yeah, I think if we can get a little bit further on this flow, we could do some UI design in another one. I know I say that every week, but I'm kind of interested in it now that we've got a bit of a flow going. Okay, so where's our Jamboard gone? So we've got this page here now. So we need a little box we can put in to create a site or channel. So that's our first decision. So what are we actually making from this initial user entry point? So on that one that we looked at, they ran some sort of search. It wasn't, I don't know what that was looking at. It asked for Sunday Club as all one word, but Sunday Club doesn't have one of those little like vanity URLs. So I don't know quite what they were doing there. I wonder if we could go and look in the inspector to see what's actually, oh God, I've already forgot that. Were they called like Rivet or something? Oh, I've spelled it wrong. That's when you know it's cool, when it's too cool to use the words that you think it might use. So let's go take a look at what this is actually doing. So when we did this, it brought nothing back. So it's nothing back. So it's not calling a separate. Oh, this is a WordPress site. Okay, cool. So it's going off and running some sort of search YouTube function there. And then if I do this, it brings back just the stats. Okay, so it actually brings back the full HTML thing. That's so it's not bringing back JSON that the UI is doing stuff with. So is there some sort of YouTube search API? This is kind of interesting to get to this point in streaming, by the way, because like until now we've just been doing Railsy stuff, so I kind of like know what we're doing, whereas now we're genuinely just like Googling stuff together. So we're learning this as we go. Like I have no, I've never worked with the YouTube API before, I don't think. Done like a couple of like their embed stuff, but nothing where I've done anything complex. So call this method on live data to see the API. Cool, okay, so well, can we then try that here? Oh, I have to sign. Whoa, that's... That's pretty cool, actually. Okay, so you can kind of try out. The table list by keyword. This example retrieves the first 25 search results associated with the keyword. Surfing by type by default, the type parameter does not specify a value, which means the response could include videos, playlists, and channels. Oh, so you can say just get me channels. So that's cool. They're just basically saying you don't need to bother knowing the name of the thing. But then that's weird, because why doesn't that then work? Or does it bring back more than one result, so it's not sure? But then why wouldn't... Because there are other channels called Sunday Club, so I don't know why it knows that Sunday Club one word works. Sunday Club doesn't. Okay, that's pretty cool. So... we could basically skip that step and say... that seems a lot of... potentially unreliable work, because I could have typed in Sunday Space Club and it not worked and thought, oh well, screw it, these guys can't help me. Like that's, if I type in that and that, nothing found to give it another go. I'm like, well, that's the channel I want to work with. So like, if they can't find it, they can't let me build a website for it. That's really interesting, actually. I wonder how often that happens. Like people get the name of their channel wrong or something like that. Like they've got a weird spelling. Okay, so we don't want that. We want to just have a text box that people can type into. And what do they create when they do that? They actually build. I think we want them to. I think we want to build a site with that name in. So if they type like here, if they type Sunday Club, they would create a site called Sunday Club. And maybe under the hood, we also create them a default channel called Sunday Club that they can then rename later. Or we say, okay, well, now connect your channel. So maybe a channel has to have a connection to a third-party API or something like that. Okay, so... Yeah, okay, let's give that a try. This is when you're seeing me stare blankly, this is the point at which I should have done this planning beforehand and known some of the attributes of what the hell a site is, and what the difference between that and a channel and that and an organization is. But let's not worry about any of that. Let's just plow blindly on, because that's going to really be the best way to approach this. Just pure blind optimism, I think. So let's so we've got a bunch of stuff in here. Let's just chuck all this in. Wait, what? I don't usually do that via there. I assumed that would do a patch. Oh, fuck it, I'm just going to do it in the UI. I'll do it in here. Yeah, that's fine. Fine. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Just want to keep going. Okay. So what did we end up adding to our channel? So our channel at the moment has a name, description, and a slug, which we would, I think, still keep for all of it. That's great. Has an organization ID, which that one might be able to go. And then whether it was suspended or not. Okay, so I think our site is basically the same as that, pretty much. Yeah, let's build our site out next. So I think what we'll do is we'll just get that first step working, because we're already like an hour and a bit in, because we started a bit late. So didn't building our model also build up migration? Was that not what we... but it also built a bunch of test stuff, which I can't be bothered to delete. Okay, so let's just do create sites, and we want to, I can't remember if that's plural or singular to think about this. So let's say they were going to have a name, just text. They're going to have a description, which is text. Really should have done some planning. They're going to have a slug, which is text. Again, because we're using Postgres, I think text covers a multitude of sins here on the length of the string. And what else do we care about them having? What did the sites have? The channels have? Name, description, slug. Name, description, slug. Oh, an organization ID. Yeah, okay. So let's. Oh, you. Is it references? Is that the shortcut in active record? Oh, Rails. Rails migration references. References. User references. Okay, so can I do organization. Oh wait, which way round is that? Create products name string packaging. Oh, I've already completely lost what I was doing there. Also available as belongs to. Oh, that's cool. Instance generates that. The migration will create a user ID column and an appropriate index. From what okay, cool. Always forget that stuff. So if you are a learner and you have made it this far into a stream at any point, don't panic about memorizing any of those APIs because I can never remember any of them. I googled them. I think literally every time for years now. This is rampantly professional. Some people are really good at memorizing that stuff. Like that always kind of blows me away. So timestamps you get, and that'll do. I think let's just go with that. So if you watch the early, I mean, I'm guessing this we're not aimed at super beginners or anything, but you've probably done those kind of migrations and stuff and built them out. Again, I'm not being super detailed, or we haven't done a whole bunch of planning, so we can just chuck this stuff in and we'll figure out later if we need to mess around with it. So we've got our new model, we've got our migration, we've got an index. Should have done that originally, actually. We have to go back and do all those another time. So let's get that and that in there. Let's put the model in as well then. So if we say should now have a model spec for site. Yeah, it doesn't do anything yet. Oh yeah, it has an association, and we did add our matches thing. And I know people aren't into these all the time. Like you're not really testing them, but like I find them pretty helpful to even just to be aware of the associations. As if you remove one or something, you just want the test to remind you. So in here, we can then add site. I don't know if site is the site, and that belongs to organization. Cool, so does this then pass tests? Yes, okay. So we can add those to that commit. Got basic model, it just doesn't do anything. And we can add that there, so we can do whip, add site model, migration update. Cool, so what I wanted to take a look at was if we go to our homepage now, we could actually say, well, let's build, we could create a site from here. And we wouldn't have a user. So if we go back to our Jamboard, so we take a look at our process flow. If we create a site here, an organization or anything else we need, we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't have a user, so we wouldn't be able to make that association, but we have got the user started on the flow of creating things. And then we could ask them to populate more information about it. So you could not reserve, like you could generate like a temporary slug and some other temporary information you needed just to get them through this flow. But obviously it wouldn't do anything. It would create a line in the database and that's it. But they would then have to carry on this flow to get to the end and then take ownership of the thing that they had made. That would mean you then wouldn't have to worry about like if they call it like Sunday Club and that slug gets generated here at the point where you create the line in the database. If they leave the process and then come back, you don't then have to worry about them reclaiming it. You could basically generate some dummy stuff to get them through here, and only when they've claimed it do you then allow them to pick a real slug or something like that. So that you could also just do it locally at their end. You could say we're just going to create a cookie with this information in, or some other local storage or whatever. And then when they came back, you could drop them back into the process. Not overly interested in that. I don't really care at this point if they're either going to complete that kind of setup flow or not to get going. Because if they jump device, they still have to do the same setup again. So I'm kind of interested in what that would look like. I think that's going to need more planning than this, but let's take a look at what that could look like. So obviously we need a sites controller. We're going to build a new site from here, from this point. We are going to create that record in the database. So let's build that real quick. And kind of let's build this format. That's where we'll get to today. And we can just let it publicly, like, maybe you could put a capture or something to try and prevent spam or something. But in reality, if the rows that you're entering there are meaningless, there's no benefit to spamming that action. So you wouldn't need to create a user account or anything. So let's say we would want a sites controller, and then we want the corresponding spec for that. And this is at the root level. I'm not really namespacing this because it's literally the place where you would create a site. And again, I haven't done any prep, so I could be way off on all this stuff. So this is all just off the top of my head, so let's not panic about it being too polished or anything like that. So in here, we can grab some of this boilerplate stuff. This would be sites control. It'd be plural now. So static was just because it was static. So this is sites. That's already sites. Sites controller. And this is going to be the create action. And on here we should have, actually we need that to go up there. Need Rubocop running to remind me to do those. And then here, this will be our sites controller, so update that. And that's gonna be our create action. And what do we want to do? So as a non-logged in visitor, because we don't really care about should create a site. That's it. That's all we really wanted to do for now. But let's create it with let's just say a valid site in the description. Then all we want to check is that the name comes in. So we want to say create, and then the params that we're going to put in are the name. The params are going to be the site. I don't think I've got those params right, but let's Oh, well then we could just do expect. Oh, God, bear with me. Okay, so in here we could do let. Let's put that on 2 lines so we can make it visible. Sorry, I'm just writing the spec out first. So let create action, and then we can say expect the create action to, and then we just literally like check change site.count by 1. We haven't had to log in or anything, so we can just move that. I don't even know if we need that context, but whatever. So create, as a normal, you do the create action, and it should create a valid site. Because do I want to change the, do I want to check that the name is, let's just get, come on, let's get going. So we want to grab, so we want to make sure we've got a site, and we want to allow that to have a name, which I think is the name of the attribute we gave it. And then in here, we don't need any actions or anything to check for auth. We're just going to let everyone do this for now. Again, there are issues around that, not dwelling on that. Let's just go. So, is that right? Or just call new and save? Gosh, it's been so long since I've done that. Can I just call Rails.create with params? Yeah, .create, and then you pass in a bunch of params. So that should then give us back a, oh, because that would then be, that gives us back a true or false, right? Or presumably we could just do, and then this gives us our conditional. And then I don't have another path to pass them to, so let's just, either way we'll pass them back here, but here we'll just put a flash notice, and then we'll put in our site name. Again, this is just dummy stuff, just to get us moving. Has been created. I don't know. You can pass the notice. Oh, hello, by the way. Hi. You can pass the notice as parameter. Yeah, I know you can. They get it's actually, I don't really like the lines getting long because I've got the font so big. So I tend to do them on 2 lines just to try and keep the line length down. So that's a habit that I've been doing while I've been doing streaming stuff. So thank you. Thank you. Hello and good morning, by the way. So let's check this in. So do we think that this will work? Yeah, it's really, the font size thing is something that I didn't really take into account when starting streaming. It is phenomenally large. I don't think it really comes across too well because I have three screens here, and one of them is like one of those Retina fancy displays. And normally I can have 3 full columns of code on my in VS Code, and here I have two that don't fit. So it's a big difference. So let's keep going to let's get this right. So we were in controllers, I think, and I think we were doing the sites controller. So let's see. I actually have totally no, cool. Oh, okay, cool. We haven't added any routes for this yet. Cool. So, well, this is down here essentially the same thing. So we just need, we'll just do a create action for now because that's all we've got. And then we can just pass them on. We're just going to build our site and then pass them somewhere else. Oh, okay, cool. So it failed, but we do have a real test. Okay, so it's going to the right place. So is anything happening? Do we get to here, for example? I'm just checking that's actually going to the right place because I could easily have just wired that up. Right, well, that wasn't doing this. Put S, by the way, is something that I just tend to do. I have a keyboard shortcut for it, and it's literally just like my quick way of saying, am I hitting this this path, basically? And then it's just something that's visual in the editor. So like here, you can just see it in the output. So that's the most common reason I do it. So let's just put a bang method on the end there. So we know we're hitting this, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. But I find stuff like that really helpful, rather than having to put in like a pry to check that you're hitting that code flow. Usually very often you just want a yes or no. Like, am I getting to this line? And I find something visual helps me do that rather than something like a pry where you've got to go in and then stop. You're actually stopping the control flow. So that having a keyboard shortcut is super helpful. The organization must exist. Okay. The organization must exist. Ah, right. That brings us perfectly full circle to our original conversation of like, at what point we've introduced this complexity of forcing this organization to be here, because that's the thing that would then allow us to have like, rather than tying a user to a site, so if they want to have multiple, blah, 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 you actually want to have teams of users and like bring in all that complexity, and how do you handle that in the control panel? So immediately you bump into it. So we have told our code that our site must have an organization, and then we want to create a site, and it's like, what do you want to do? How are you going to deal with this now? Are you going to build a dummy one? Are you going to release the requirement for that? And I think, and because I haven't done enough planning, I am going to have to answer that question in this flow. And I think the kind of two strongest candidates are either allowing that to be null and then just assuming that if there's no organization that the user owns it, which would be a kind of a quick win for now, or building a dummy organization. What I don't really want to do is pass any of that complexity onto the user. I don't really want them to have to know about that, because that's complexity that I put in at an early design stage to say I want this to be more complex. It's not the user's fault. So for example, and what I mean by not passing on to the user is, on this diagram we could easily say like, hey, create an organization, or like, what's your team name, or something like that. That's a really common pattern that I notice in a lot of user interfaces, which is like passing the complexity of the models behind that built the system onto the user. You're often filling in fields and you're like, I don't think I need to put this in. I think you need this information. I don't think I need this information. I only need these 3 things to make this thing work. You need these other bits of information to make all of that stuff happen. And you could abstract that away. You could build an organization with a dummy name and never expose that to me until I say, hey, I want to add another channel. And you're like, great, do you want to manage this with teams and stuff like that? So that's what I mean by not passing that on to the user. In this case, let's force one to exist, I think. Yeah, I think I'm going to agree. I'm hoping you guys can see the chat. I'm hoping the font size is big enough, but Pedro's put in the chat, I usually get around that by having a default org created by the scenes. I think I'm going to lean that way as well. So there's a couple of reasons why I think that's a good idea. Yeah, exactly. So the chat is, it makes it easier to have data consistency. So as soon as you bring in this idea of having optional relationships, you're always finding yourself checking for the presence of something or lack thereof, and that's often a big issue if you introduce something later in the life of the app. So you can't backfill it very easily. So you then have this constant conditionals of like, does this exist? Does it not? What do we do in these scenarios? And creating kind of like, as Pedro says, like a default one or a dummy one, even if you never end up using that feature, you kind of have that dummy data there. There is a kind of knock-on complexity that you then do have this weird thing that you kind of have to keep hiding a bit. You have to decide what to do with it because you've got this thing. You also can easily screw yourself over, I think, by like, again, I have inserted this complexity earlier to make the stream code more complex, so it's kind of a false complexity that I've inserted. But one of the ways that I've bumped into this is everyone assumes maybe there's teams in there or groups or something that go between user and organization or something like that. So we build in all the dummy and default organizations or models and stuff, and then like a year into the project or app or whatever, that's not what has happened. And basically it turns out that users never work for organizations, or worse, organizations need different like organizations or verticals within them, and everything's gone to pot, and you're like, I've spent 6 months abstracting that complexity away, and then it's still the wrong complexity anyway, and you have to do away with it. So I'm just kind of reinforcing that I'm inserting this complexity. We're going to create this default version, this kind of dummy organization, and we're then going to have to deal with hiding that away from users. In reality, this is kind of a dummy app, so it doesn't really make too much difference, but we can kind of get around that. Although we are going to use this app to build the website for Sunday Club. So there is no Sunday Club website until we have got this thing shipped. So that's our big incentive. So we could do. I'm aware that I'm kind of reaching the end of today, just because it's been a kind of a long stream anyway. But there are actually different ways to approach this. This could be a good way to pick up next week. So no, let's just carry on with the flow next week. But basically, we could have. We could kind of go away and do like a builder, like a factory kind of class to go and do that stuff for us. So hey, I want to make a new site, pass some params and have it build loads of default stuff. We could do what I'm going to do here, which is like the simplest version of this. I think we can just do. I can't remember what we set on organization. Does it need a name? No. Can we build an empty one? Does that work? As an association? I'm tempted to say we probably shouldn't. Undefined method build for. Oh, hang on. Oh, is it build organization? Is that the Railsy thing? I know there's a Railsy thing around this, and I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Oh yeah, it's built. So this is. I do get the kind of no magic like argument. So if we then do put a pry in here. This is in our test on the right hand side. So then we run our test again. And remember, if you remember what the test is doing, it says you're doing a post action to this controller, and it's saying, hey, I expect the action to change the site count by 1. What we're also going to do is just put a pry in there after that's run. And it should stop us in that test. And so if we do site.count, that should be 1. However, if we now do organization.count, that's also 1. And so this is the site that got created with test name. Again, we didn't test that the name was there, but it should be there. What we can then do is site.organization. And that's the dummy one that has been created. Now, where did that come from? Where did this organization come from? This is something that you may have bumped into in, like, if you're doing, tutorials or bootcamp or something. Build underscore is doing kind of what it says on the tin. It's building an organization for this site. So site.build organization. And it's kind of a shorthand for, you could have done organization equals organization.new site : site. And that would have, that also gets you an organization. This does that for you, and it would also build, I think you can pass params to it and stuff like that. I'd have to look up the docs and stuff, but that's kind of a bit of magic-y stuff to get you out of the gate. Continue. Hang on, I am going to look that up because then we could do like Rails build underscore Rails build association. Because I'm just. Can I really want to find the actual build underscore rather than just the dot build. Well, that's weird. It did let me put dot build on. Oh, does it need to be? Oh, the syntax I think might work the other way around if we did. Keep going all the way back. I think if we did organizations, would that have worked as well? So let's come out of pry there, go back in. Does that still give us the same thing? No. How come organization has many pets? Oh, because I'm doing it from the belongs to, I assume so. Person.pet says has many. You can't build backwards. Okay, that's fair enough. I think that's why. So can I get back to where it was? No. So just type the fucking thing back in again. Okay, cool. Okay, I haven't got time to find the docs for that right now because that seems like a waste of time, but that does pass and does what we expect it to do. And we can actually just check if we can pass it a name. We can just check the organization name. That'll either fail completely or it'll have the name. Yep, so you can pass build underscore organization, the params that you need to build the association, and that will then be saved. That organization will be saved on, when calling save on the site. I'm hoping this is making some sense. But we are doing exactly what Pedro suggested, which is making this kind of default org or some sort of hidden org behind the scenes. So we can have this organization and then essentially we can do nothing with it. We can just ignore it. So that gives us our association. Right, take our pry out and then let's build our form. So let's just commit this real quick. I'm just going to do this real quick. Add sites controller. Create action. And so on here, we should, this is our homepage view. Oh, it was form with these days, wasn't it? It gets all fancy now. So we could do, is that it? I think that was it. Because I'm pretty impressed with myself remembering it wasn't form 4 anymore. Oh, and then this was different as well, and I can't remember what it was. There's a form in the site somewhere. In edit. Okay. And these are these tailwind classy things. And was there something for... Oh, I'm going to steal all of this code here. It needs a keyword model. Ah, okay. On here. Is that what we had to do with the other one? Oh, I see. Okay, is that the new API for that? Or am I just too used to using like simple form or something where you just pass it the model? If it is the new API, that's probably good because it's stricter. Thank you for that as well. So, okay, so we've got a new site. We're gonna do name, and then we can say, yeah, okay, cool. So create site. And if you remember earlier, we did a feature test. So this would be, the feature test was just proving that the page rendered. Come at that. But this could then be the start of that. You've got a form on the page. Your feature test can then fill in the form, click the button, and take you to the next page. And because we've got this concept of a flow, your perfect. Okay. Thank you. That's super useful. So we've got this concept of a flow. So the feature test can kind of take you down that flow. So okay. So, they haven't done any of the Tailwind UI stuff. That's actually not crazy. Can't miss that button. And so if you remember that because we're passing it site.new and we haven't namespaced that controller, which is what we were doing previously. If you remember, we had to tell when we were namespacing the controllers, when we had like the control panel version and the normal version, we had to tell the form, don't this controller, the model I'm working with, don't go to the sites controller or channels controller. I need you to go somewhere different. So you had to basically tell the form explicitly where to go. Because we're not doing that here, and it's just the sites controller, it is literally just at sites, and we shouldn't need to pass anything to it. And the manifestation of that, which we looked at last time, is in the form itself. So if you look, it's just going to /sites, and if you need to check that, you can always go over to your routes, and you can see that you've got /sites, and it's a post, and it's expected to go to sites/create. So often in those errors that you get on the when you're either writing your tests or something like that, no route exists when you're trying to submit something or something like that. Often learners are going back to their code necessarily. Then I'm not really describing that well, but often my first port of call for that is often like this and this. Like, what is the things I'm giving the form aren't matching up with the routes that are there, and it's like, oh, okay, well maybe the parameter isn't called ID, it's called slug or something like that. Like there's a series of things not missing. This little information page is really useful for debugging those and checking that your forms are going where you think they are. So if you've got /sites, it's really easy, I think, when you're begin working with Rails to assume that /sites would go to the sites controller. It is very common in something like a legacy app where that isn't taking place. Like 5 years later, that got renamed, and it now goes to /site builder, or the site builder controller that's namespaced in builders or whatever it is. So that's something that's worth taking a look at. So we're going to have test site. It's going to be the name of our site. And if we click that, test site has been created. So we now have a new site. And if you remember, that will also have created our organization. So we could now build out our admin area to go and look at the list of sites, go and look at the list of organizations and the associations. And that all came from this one controller action here, which I automatically here, that one controller action here, which built that out. And we can also then tick that off of the first step of our flow. Now, we haven't moved the user onto the second step of our flow because we don't have the controller action and view to take them there. But we have a record in the database, and that can then be used however we wish to pass them to this next page. And what do I mean by however we wish? So, for example, I said we might not create a slug straight away. So if they type in Sunday Club here, you could say the slug was Sunday Club, and then this next page could be, website.com/Sunday Club /setup/details. I don't know, like whatever it's called. The problem is at that point that you are having to use that slug. And if the user, like you said, if they drop out that flow, they've lost that slug or something like that. So what we can do is maybe make the slug temporary, just put a UUID or something dummy in there, or give them a path, or store it on their browser and pass them somewhere else. I think that's a really good place to pick up for next week. And I'm also, I'm going to say this again that I say every week. I'm going to try and do a homework edition where we just jump into Sketch and try and build these out, so that doesn't mean I'm fumbling around as much on the episodes themselves. If we know what we're building towards, that's actually a lot easier. Coming up with the UI and doing the build on the stream is, there's a lot going on. So I will try and get that done during the week, if not later this afternoon. I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't hold me to any of that stuff, but I think the Sketch side of things people would be interested in as well. So next week what we'll do is we're going to build this flow out. So we're going to work out how we are going to associate this flow with this individual record, but not create anything that's permanent. Maybe we look at adding something like a capture or something, because we've just exposed a create endpoint with no auth or anything like that. But again, there's no value to anyone spamming it particularly, so do we really care? Having them move through the flow, and then at the end of that flow, kicking devise into action and having that user suddenly become associated with the thing that we have created. And that is really the key point, because this is the point where you begin that relationship with that user. They give you something where you're allowed to communicate with them, an email address, a password, something like that. And so many flows begin with give me your email address and password, and then you're asked to do something. So I'm really interested in again, these aren't tutorials, but like an example of an app that builds out a thing, then associates it. You can't rely on the thing having a user until its last step, perhaps, and that. How we're going to work with devise on that, how we're going to come back and say this is the thing that this user has made, how do we prevent spam, and a few things around that. So I think that'll be interesting flow to build out, and hopefully, like I said, we'll have done a UI session in Sketch, so we'll know what it looks like when they get there. And then I think, just totally off the top of my head, but I assume at this point, especially if we can ask for the YouTube channel ID or the Twitch channel ID or something like that, I don't think we need any API information. I'm hoping, having had a quick Google, we can hopefully go and get some content from those channels. So when they get to the next page, which would be like, hey, you've tried to build a website for this. At the start of the stream, we looked at that Rivet site, which hadn't quite done it. I think they try and go and get some stuff. I'm not sure how this works, but maybe we can have some content waiting for them. So they then are able to see a preview maybe of the site they're building. And they have to, maybe at that point, they have to pick the slug and maybe, commit to some other details before they can publish the site or something like that. I don't know how it would work, but that's where we're going with this. Thank you so much for everyone who has watched, whether it's live with me here today or who's catching up with these videos later. Thank you so much to people via the chat. Pedro has been super useful. Thank you so much for catching stuff. Apologies for the audio issues. I'm running a bit late today, and if I don't manage to do the visual thing, I will see you next week no matter what. Anyway, 10:30 a.m. UK time on this channel. So have a great week, everyone, and I will see you all next Sunday.